Hello and welcome back for another Cuddle Up Sampler block tutorial video. In today's video, we are going to be making the candles block. This is the center block of our Cuddle Up Sampler quilt, and it is such a fun block to piece. So go ahead and grab your Cuddle Up Sampler pattern book. We are going to dive into the piecing on this block. To begin this block, we are going to make these top flame units on our candles. You're going to need A rectangles, M squares, and N squares. So let's grab those A pieces, and we're going to first use the M pieces. We're using that same stitch and flip method that we have used for past blocks. I have already marked the diagonal line on the back of my M squares, and we are going to place these right sides together with the top left corner of our A rectangle. Sew on that marked diagonal, and then as in previous blocks, I like to press away, make sure everything lines up perfectly, and then trim out those bottom two layers. After you have sewn your first stitch and flip corner, then you will sew M to the other corner to complete the top of that unit. Once you've completed that, you're going to do the same using those little N squares up here to complete the stitch and flip corners on the bottom two corners of this unit. Pay attention to the direction your diagonal is oriented. There's nothing worse than starting to sew these and realizing that you have your piece going like this, because that's just not going to work. So make sure that you orient those diagonals as illustrated to finish these bottom two corners. You're going to make 3 of these flame units as you see here. So let's get that taken care of. 3 flame units are now complete. These completed flame units are each going to measure the same size as that original A rectangle did when you started. Whenever we're doing stitch and flip corners, you always want the unit to measure the same measurement after you've added those corners as it did prior to sewing those corners on. So the next thing that we are going to do is to sew O rectangles onto both sides of each of those flame units. You see this happening here in step 3. So we're going to sew those on both sides, just like this, and pressing away from the center. So we'll do that for all of these flame units. The 3 flame units are now complete. I've tucked them up here at the top, and we're going to revisit those a little bit later. You can see in step 3 what those units now measure. We are now going to move on to the Ohio Star blocks that we're going to be making. For some of you, this may be the part that you have been putting to the back of your mind, hoping that maybe we aren't really going to be making these small little stars, but here we are. Now, if you prefer not to piece these small stars, you can see what these measure here in step 8. So you can see right here by my hand how small these are back here in our quilt, but you can see the actual measurement of those stars in step 8. If when you look at that number, you're filled with fear and trepidation and you don't want to make those, you could opt to cut yourself just a piece of fabric, a little fabric square in that measurement, and substitute those for the Ohio Star that we're making. Now, I would encourage you to try at least one, see how it goes. Sometimes things go better than we think that they might. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. So if you have not worked with tiny piecing, this is a great chance just to try your hand at it, see what you think, see if it goes your way this time around. But do know that you have the option to substitute just a square in that measurement if you prefer not to piece the block. You'll just have a really cute little patchwork candle in place of those Ohio Star blocks. You'd have just another patchwork fabric. So that would be really cute. For those of you who are going to be piecing right along with me, let's go ahead and move here on to step 4. We are going to be using B and P squares. So here are P and B, and we are going to be starting by making some half square triangles. We made a larger version of the Ohio Star in our first block, in that Christmas tree block, so you might remember piecing that. We're going to be using the same techniques that we used in that block. We're just going to be doing it on a smaller scale. So let's go ahead and dive in. In step 4, you're going to see that you will be drawing a marked diagonal on the back of each of your P-squares. I marked my sewing lines as opposed to my cutting lines, so I have 2 lines drawn on the back. You can do whichever method you prefer. And so I'm going to pair this with my B-square and then sew on both of those lines. If you are opting to mark the diagonal, you will be sewing a 1/4 inch away from both sides of your marked diagonal. And you're going to do that for 2 units. So you're going to pair together 2 with your B's. So 2 P's and 2 B's. And then sew those together. 4 half square triangles have been made. I sewed on those marked lines, and then I cut apart on the diagonal, and then I pressed all of these towards the dark fabric, which we see is how we are to press these here in this step. And then the next thing that we want to do is mark another diagonal line on the back of 2 of these. And I brought down my little ruler that I like to use when I mark my sewing lines as opposed to marking that diagonal line. I've talked about this here before, but I know it's easy to miss that information if you maybe aren't watching all of the videos here on the channel. So I wanted to show just a quick little mark of how I do this. So we are marking 2 of these, and we are marking perpendicular to the direction that we just sewed. So on either side, like that. And we'll mark the other one. We just need to do 2 of these because we're pairing these together. So we'll mark the other one. Go. My table is slidier. I notice when I don't have my mat to show you guys these things, my units want to slide more than they do on a cutting mat. So I hadn't ever realized how much that cutting mat kind of keeps things from sliding around, but I sure notice it when I'm on just my tabletop here. So we have 2 of these marked, and we are going to pair these with the 2 unmarked half square triangles. We'll put those right sides together, making sure that our seams are butting up and we have different fabrics on both sides. We're going to sew on those marked lines for both of these pairs, and then go ahead and cut on the diagonal and press in one direction. You see that happening here in your pattern. Little 1/4 square triangles are now complete. Aren't those the cutest little things? I went ahead and trimmed them up using my trusty June Taylor ruler that I also talk about quite a bit here. I will have both the June Taylor ruler as well as this little OmniGrid ruler linked down below in the description box. So if you have any questions about those rulers, you'll have that information. But I went ahead and I trimmed these down to the measurement listed in step 6. And these are now ready to sew into the Ohio Star block. So let's go ahead and make a little space here. So we're going to go this way. And then we are also going to need to pull our C squares and one more M square here to complete these blocks. So C first, right here. These are going to go in your 4 corners. And then M is going to go in the center of the block, like this. Make sure I have my 1/4 square triangles going the right direction. These are always so easy to get going the wrong direction, so it's not a bad idea just to double check those. I'm also going to double check when I get over to my sewing machine to make sure they're still going the same way. So we're going to sew these together in horizontal rows first, and they get pressed away from those 1/4 square triangles. Once you have the 3 rows sewn together, you'll sew those together, and those get pressed away from the center. You see that happening here. We'll press away from the center. Here's our cute little Ohio Star block. I'm going to set this to the side up here with our flame units. And now we are going to make 2 more of these little Ohio Star blocks. We're going to use E and F right here, and we're going to use J and I right here. We're going to follow the same steps that we just did when making the green Ohio Star. We're going to make a black one and a red one. 2 more adorable little Ohio Star blocks are now complete. All right, let's tuck these up here. Now we are ready to begin sewing together our candle units here. So let's start with this green one. You're going to take your green Ohio Star, one of the flame units. Just going to move over here. So you're going to put your flame unit at the top. Your D rectangle will be attached next, and then you'll place your Ohio Star at the bottom. So those 3 pieces will be sewn together. For the black candle, you're going to take another flame unit, your black Ohio star block, and then you're also going to need pieces Q, G, and H. So we have G and H here. Let's, whoops a doodle. Let's move our red pieces over here to make a little more space. Okay, so now our black pieces. Put our flame unit up here at the top. Q is going to go right above that. So we'll put Q right above here. The flame unit is next. And then we have our G, which is going to go right here. And then after G, you're going to place your Ohio star. And then below that is your H rectangle. And then the last one we need to do is our red candle. So let's just slide this over here a little bit yet. Grab your flame unit that goes at the top. K is going to go below that. There we go. The Ohio star. And then L goes at the bottom. So I'm going to sew all of these together at one time. You're going to find all of your pressing instructions illustrated here in your pattern book, so make sure that you follow the pressing instructions, and we want to get these 3 candle units sewn together next. The 3 candle blocks are now complete. You can see what each unit measures in steps 11, 12, and 13 in your pattern book. Now we are going to do a couple different things all at one time. So I'm going to walk you through the next several steps of our pattern. First, you're going to sew R and S to the sides of your green candle block. Once you have sewn those to the sides, you will sew V to the top. You are also going to sew T and U to the sides of your red candle block. After completing that step, you will sew W to the top of that unit. Once all of these pieces are one unit, all of these pieces are one unit, you will then sew these 3 sections all together to complete your candles block. And our candles block is now a completed block. I hope you have enjoyed piecing this fun little friendly block. It's a great addition to our Cuddle Up Sampler quilt. If you have any questions, please leave that for me in the comments below this video. And if you're new to the Cuddle Up Sampler Sew Along, you will also find all the information you need to join in if you would so choose. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will catch you again next time.